All right. So, first of all, I'd just like to take a moment to again acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are convened here today. I'd like to pay my respects to their ancestors and descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country, and I recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. And today, what I'm going to be doing is talking about something called identity leadership. And just a little bit about my teaching philosophy. I have been guided by this approach of groupiness, by usness. What I really hope to do in my own courses, and what I hope you do in your courses as well, is facilitate this sense of connection and belonging between my students. And this is just some students who organized a musical performance for me, just randomly at the end of semester. And we have a great time each semester. I'm going to hopefully communicate the value of building and fostering this sense of cohesion in your courses every time you teach. And this is something that I think really speaks to two of the graduate attributes that we are learning about in this session. And those are, having students realize that they are connected citizens in this world and building their leadership capacities, right? So that they become respectful leaders. And I'm driven personally by social identity theory. That's what my research is based off, and that's also what my teaching philosophy is based off. The idea that we as individuals, right, going through society, our self-concepts are actually really inherently tied to the groups that we belong to, right? We are naturally connected citizens, and to allow students to understand that is to allow them to grow as people, as individuals, and as contributors to society. And now, when we think of groups, we can think of really proximal units like families, friends, right? We can think of the groups that we work with, right? At work, at university. We can think of hobbyist groups, but we can also think of these broader cultural and demographic groups that we are a part of. Now, we don't really identify with all of these groups to the same degree, right? To the same extent, right? There are core groups, right? The groups that we very strongly identify with. There are intermediate groups that we sort of identify with, but not as strongly, and also peripheral groups that we are a part of, but we only identify weakly with. All right. So, for example, for me, board games, very important part of my identity, and so I just depict one there, but I'm a part of multiple board games groups. I also enjoy bouldering, but it's not as important to my identity. And I'm on school committees. And even though I'm on these committees, right, they're not really an integral part of how I see myself. Okay, so what I want you to do for the next, let's say, 2 to 3 minutes is you've got a worksheet on your table, one for each of you. I want you to spend the next 2 to 3 minutes plotting out your social identities or the groups that you belong to in these three sections or three zones on your worksheet. So I'll give you a bit of time to do that before we move on. All right, so I feel that you've had enough time to list a few things down on your worksheets. And so I want to just state that this is not just random, right? The degree to which we identify with each of these groups is incredibly important, right? And it's important for multiple reasons. But I hope to demonstrate this with an experiment. So if you could access the survey that I have online and complete that. And hopefully this will allow me to show off a program that I've been working on developing over the past year or so. I want you to answer the question that comes up. So I'll wait till people are no longer following that link before moving on. Right, so I think most people have been able to access the experiment. And let me just explain to you what that experiment was all about, right? So in this experiment, you were randomly assigned to one of two conditions. Okay, so in the low identification condition, you were asked to choose one group that you weakly identify with, or a group that's in your peripheral zone. And in the high identification condition, those of you assigned to that one were asked to choose one group that you strongly identify with, right? The group, one of the groups in your core zone. And everyone was asked the same question, right? How much time, effort, and energy would you be willing to put in for this group? Right, so you'll be able to see what the results show on your phones, but could I get the results to show on the screen? Oh, no, that's me. What we see here, and I'm going to sound like a huge stats nerd, is that we have a significant difference between those groups in how happy you are or how willing you are to engage with the group and contribute to the group, right? We see the p-value is very, very low, which means that the difference between these two means is statistically significant. So what you can see there, if we go back to the slide, is that identification is a group, or with a group, is incredibly important. First of all, in engaging and motivating people. The more people identify with the group, the more engaged they are, the more motivated they are to contribute to the group. But that's not where it ends, right? So the research shows that identification has a large range of positive outcomes. All right, the more strongly you identify, the more you cooperate and the more willing you are to collaborate within that group. All right, the more open to influence you are, the more you're likely to adopt norms and values. And it also has positive benefits when it comes to our psychosocial well-being, right? A sense of belonging people can derive from the groups that they highly identify with, right? They feel greater meaning and purpose. And it also has effects on health and well-being. Okay, so hopefully you can see that identification with the groups around us is incredibly important. And now this is something that is not novel, new information. In fact, work coming out of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander thinkers and researchers has also shown that identification is incredibly important, right, for social and emotional well-being. So Professors Graham Gee and his colleagues have come up with this framework to understand social and emotional well-being in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that includes connection, right? 7 types of connection as important for people's psychosocial functioning. Connection to country and land, connection to culture, connection to community, connection to family and kinship, right? So what we're seeing here is that this concept of connection, this concept of identification is incredibly important. We as teachers are in a position to leverage this understanding, right? When it comes to the course identity, the student identity within our courses. Because if we ask students to map their course or student identity, they can map them here. But what we really want them to do is map them here, right? Core groups that they strongly identify with, given those benefits of identification, right? So how do we do that? Well, we engage in something called identity leadership, all right? And it's this very new age conceptualization of leadership that is less about me as a leader, but us as a group. All right, so it's this idea that effective leadership centers on a leader's understanding of shared group memberships that they have with others. And leaders who can leverage this sense of us and we have the greatest influence and inspire the most in the people who see them as leaders. And how exactly do you practice identity leadership? Well, there are 4 dimensions of identity leadership that facilitate a sense of us and increase identification with whatever group you are a part of. Right, so the first is identity entrepreneurship, and this is where you craft a sense of us. You include people in that group. You make sure that they feel like they belong. right? You identify and define shared values, norms, and ideals. But not only do you foster this sense of groupiness, identity prototypicality means that you as a leader have to be seen as just another member of your group. Okay, you have to model the core attributes of the group so that people who see you as a leader can follow that modeling. Identity advancement is doing it for us. In a position of leadership, you should advance shared interests of your group, right? You should prioritize and help address your group's needs. And identity impresarioship is making us matter, right? Facilitating collaboration and connection between group members by bringing them together through structures, activities, and events. Okay, so for the next however much time we have left, 1 minute, right? If you could access this Padlet, and I want you to think about yourself as teachers in a learning and education context, how you can practice these identity leadership dimensions or these processes in order to increase student identification in your courses and therefore student outcomes, right? Don't need to record them on the Padlet if you don't want to, but at least have a short discussion in your tables. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for engaging in this discussion on your tables, and to some people for engaging with the Padlet as well. What you can see here is that, yeah, so many awesome suggestions, right? Creating spaces and places for students to engage with one another, right? And to describe new emerging identities. And hopefully you can see that these practices are not only addressing, that can not only address identity entrepreneurship, but creating spaces and places may also address identity impresarioship and such as well, right? Defining us in our space. Visibility matters, right? If this is about representation, ensuring that, you know, we have lecturers who reflect the diversity of our students, because that's an issue, right? Faculty diversity, right? Engaging in advocacy, working on behalf of the group to achieve recognition and reward for the group. Okay, so when we've got events under identity impresarioship, organizing events for our students, right? To help them engage in this groupiness and live out their group memberships. So I'd just like to thank you so much for engaging in this, and hopefully, you know, we can share this link around and people can continue adding to it so that everyone has a resource for how to engage in identity leadership in their own courses. And thank you.